You're listening to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast, episode 213. Welcome to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. I'm your host, Paula Price, lawyer turned certified executive coach. This podcast was created to empower women lawyers just like you to create a life and practice you love. Join me every week for a break from the hustle so we can focus on you, what you truly want, and how you can create it. If you're over the overwhelm, done with putting out fires, and ready to redefine success on your own terms, you're in the right place. Ready for today's episode? Let's dive in. Have you ever noticed that there are some people who seem to stay calm, no matter what it is that is going on around them? And have you ever felt like, oh, I really wish I had some tools so that I could do that better? I know for myself, I have had moments where I've managed to stay really calm, right? To the point where I'll receive feedback about how I handle the situation really well. And I'll feel like, good for me because I didn't feel calm. And there have been other situations where I look back and I think, I really didn't deal with that situation very well. I don't think I came across the way that I wanted to. So today, I'm really excited to share with you some of the strategies, the best practices that I have learned over the years in my capacity as a lawyer, in my capacity as a coach, as someone who is really interested in mental health and learning how to do things, learning about our physiology, understanding ourselves better. I'm going to share that with you. And what I think you're going to take away from today's episode are tips and tricks and tools and strategies that you can actually apply so that when you're in those situations that you find difficult or triggering, you have a plan, you know what you can do in order to feel more calm, in order to exude more calm, in order to feel like you've got steps you can take to bring yourself back to baseline and process what it is you need to process and move forward. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to dive into today's topic with you. Now, before we dive into the substance of our conversation, I would love to invite you to a free webinar that I'm hosting on June 26th. So if you listen to this podcast episode the day it goes live, you still have time to register. It will be at noon Pacific time on Thursday, June 26th, and you are going to attend a workshop where we're going to dive into your year. We're going to do a mid-year reset. And so you'll be able to take inventory of where you are currently and where you want to go. You might find that at the beginning of a calendar year, there's a lot happening. There are lots of resolutions being made. There's lots of great big dreams and hopes for the year itself. And by the time you reach June, you're kind of beat up a little bit. You might have kids like me and you're like, oh, summer's coming. I need to get ready for it. And so maybe you're looking at a couple of months of a very different schedule from what you're used to. And you want to set yourself up for success so that you enjoy your summer. And when things start to heat up again in the fall, you're ready for it, you have a plan, and you finish your year feeling satisfied and accomplished instead of bewildered and like, oh my God, what just happened? And so join me for the webinar, and we are going to help you make a plan, a reset plan. Now, if you are not able to join, but you do have a chance to register, go ahead, you can have the recording. If you miss it and you really want to have access to the recording, send me a note and I can send that to you. No problem. Now, there's another opportunity for us to work together, which I'm hoping is something that would resonate with you. It is a 6-month virtual group coaching and mastermind program for women lawyers. This will be the 6th time that I am running this program, and every time I run it, I just love it even more. I love the women who have participated in these programs. I should be clear, I love all of the women who have gone through this program equally. And what I have found is that I always ask myself at the time to renew this offer, is this something that I really want to do? And the answer is always yes, because I want to create that container. I want to create that curriculum for women who want to come together and use that community to focus on a goal, but it's so much more than focusing on a goal. It's focusing on you in relationship to that goal. So to give you a sense of the curriculum, what we do is we have a theme every month, and the themes are to, first of all, set a goal for yourself. So if you decide to join us, you would set a goal for the program. So something that you would work toward to the end of the year, December 2025. And then in July, you would be focusing on your self-concept. So who do you need to be or become in order to achieve that goal? Then we move into obstacles, which I love talking about because each of you will have a different challenge, a different set of challenges that stand between you and your goal. And when you can figure out how to overcome those challenges, you've now cracked the code for achieving what it is that you really want. Then we move into confidence, which is one of the things that I think so many women struggle with. And when you can learn how to develop that as a skill, it opens up so many doors for you. Then we move into boundaries. So now that you've established what you're working toward, what's important to you, who you want to be as a leader, what confidence really means to you, how you're going to build that, then you want to set more boundaries, right? You want to protect the things that are important and move away from the things that maybe are distractions to what truly aligns for you. And then finally, we talk about sustainable success. So how do you create this over the long term? So if that's a curriculum that appeals to you, this is probably a program that you would really enjoy. I do cap the group at 8 women lawyers. So if you do want to join, then please do take some steps to do that. You're welcome to reach out to me. We can have a chat about what that would be like, or you can simply register right away. The course page is live, so you can simply register and then you will be in the group. Now, in addition to our group program, so there are 2 group calls every month, we also do a couple of bonus group calls, one about time management, and the nature of that call shifts depending on what the needs of the group are. And we also do one on transitions, because whether you're doing a transition that is a job A to job B type transition, or something that's a little more subtle than that, understanding what transitions involve, understanding how change can be really uncomfortable, and what you can do to navigate your way through each step is really helpful. So we do a class on transitions. And then in addition to the group calls, there's also 2 individual calls with me. So typically you would have a call at the beginning when you're setting up your goal for the program. And then your next call might be midway or as we're wrapping up the program to really circle back on where you are, how you're doing. And what I've noticed about the group and the women who join the group is that it really is a place where you get to know yourself. It's a place where you see yourself within a community and you learn from others. You see that you're not alone in some of the challenges that you're facing. You learn of other opportunities and approaches, different ways to do things. It can feel really validating to have the support of other women who are there to support you and cheer you on. It can help with accountability. I love it when a lawyer says, well, I knew we had this call, so I went ahead and took these steps. That is one of the things that brings joy into my life, as you can tell, probably from my voice. And it's also a place where I think a lot of women learn how to align themselves with their priorities. And so that difficult exercise of figuring out what it is that you want and making the difficult choices and then executing on those choices. So that could be setting the boundaries. It could be saying no. It's realizing that you need to shift in a certain direction. It's delegating more. It's letting go of the desire to please everybody. It's that deep work that when you can really understand yourself better and understand your values and understand what matters to you and then have the confidence to follow through, that's when things can really shift for you, both in terms of your performance externally and also the way that you feel about yourself, that internal dialogue that you have with yourself. So if what I've just described sounds good to you, reach out to me, register for the course. I would absolutely love the opportunity for us to work together in that container. Again, it's from July to December. It is really just having that 6-month period together is amazing. I do record all of the group calls. So if you can't attend a call live, that is no problem. You'll have access to the recording. And the calls typically are the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of the month at noon Pacific time. On occasion, I will reschedule if something has come up. It's fairly unusual. I like to keep it consistent so that you're not concerned about how to work these into your calendar. So that, my dear friend, is what is coming up. And I would absolutely love to hear from you if that's something that you would be interested in. Now, let's get back to the topic of today's podcast episode, which is all about staying calm when you feel anxious. And this applies to situations where maybe it's not anxious, it's maybe you feel frustrated, you might feel overwhelmed, you might feel angry even. There are lots of different emotions that you might feel that have an impact on how you respond or react in the moment. And so what we're doing here today is learning some tools so that as you're navigating life's challenges, you have things that you can do in real time in order to stay calm. I'm thinking of that famous quote, keep calm and carry on. So that's really what we're focusing on here today. Now, leading yourself with calm. Staying calm is a challenge for a number of lawyers at work, outside of work. At work, some of the things that you might struggle with are all of the competing deadlines that you might be facing and not having enough time. Maybe the deadlines are stressful because the thing that you're trying to do is really difficult and you're anticipating a lot of mental capacity, energy. It's going to be hard to do and you're stressed that you're not going to be able to get it done on time, or that you're going to do it and it's not going to be good enough. Other people are going to be critical of it. You might feel like you've taken on someone else's problem, right? Their legal problem. And you're even more concerned about getting it right than you would be if it was your own problem, right? I know I used to really feel that, the weight of that as a lawyer. I still feel that sense of responsibility on different projects, but I appreciate as a lawyer that that is something that is central to your role on a daily basis. And so that can create increased levels of anxiety and stress. You might feel like, other things that might cause stress is having to disappoint people. That is something that I know is really difficult. When I have to disappoint somebody, I don't want to do it. I might delay that conversation. It makes me feel anxious. And then at home, right? You might find that you're feeling stressed because you have a really busy life outside of work, right? If you are like me and you've got kids who still depend on you for their needs, you might find that you're trying to fit everything in. You might find things get a little bit chaotic. My kids go to school, so there's that period in the morning where I'm trying to get everybody out the door and to school on time. There's that period in the evening where I've had a full day of work and now I'm making dinner and I'm getting the kids organized and I'm trying to do all of this and I'm tired. I've made decisions all day, etc. So for you, you might find there are things that create that feeling of stress, and what you want and what we're going to talk about today is to figure out how you can stay calm. If you find that there are situations where you get triggered and you say things you later regret, you act in a way that you don't really like, this is exactly why we're here today, is to figure out, how do you stay calm? How do you not only exude that calm, but actually feel calm at the same time? So, like I mentioned, I'm going to share with you some tools that I find to be effective. These are tools that I have learned from other coaches, from mental health practitioners, from books I've read, podcasts I've listened to, and I'm not really going to attribute any single one of them to any single person because I've heard them from multiple sources and adopted some of them or adapted them to my own style. So I'm just going to share them with you. This is not intended to be a substitute for counseling or anything like that. If what you find is you have anxiety and it's really preventing you from your day-to-day activities, this is really meant to be me sharing with you what I find to be helpful in the hopes that it's going to be helpful for you as well. And I plan to share some personal examples along the way. And I will share with you that it was really fun thinking of these personal examples. I'm using my own examples because I feel like that's where I can give you the most insight, because I know how I feel about certain things. I know very well because I'm in it. And my guess is that you're going to be able to relate to some of the examples that I share, and that you'll see yourself in me and you'll be able to see how these tools could be helpful for you too. I've got a series of steps, and so we're going to start with the first one. And the first one is awareness. So if we take a step back and we think about situations where you feel triggered, you feel anxious, you maybe act in a way that you don't like. Maybe you get really nervous and you start to buzz around with this nervous energy, and that's not really how you want to lead yourself or lead others, right? You've surely had the experience of leadership from a variety of leaders, some of whom exude that calm, confident, here's what we're doing, right? They're unflappable. You learn late in the case that something terrible has happened and they take it in a stride. They come back with a plan. They make you feel safe, right? You feel like that ship is steady and you're on that ship and you know where you're going. Doesn't matter how choppy the waters are, you're solid. And so that's one style of leadership you may have experienced. And you've probably also had that experience of leadership where it is the exact opposite. It's like you're on a tippy, tiny boat with, I don't know, like I'm imagining wooden boards kind of holding this little raft together, and it's like got holes in it and the water's creeping in and the waves are choppy and you're not even sure if you're going to stay on the boat because you're getting thrown around so much. It's a very different style of leadership. It's, the leader that you're with maybe is changing directions often. Maybe they're giving you conflicting messages. Maybe they're getting really volatile. If you come back with a concern or a question, they maybe go into a bit of a rant or they get really upset. They get visibly agitated. And so you can see how that experience is so different, right? Being with somebody who exudes that sense of calm when things are going sideways versus the person that is really acting up in that situation. And the purpose here today is to think about how we can really channel the energy of the former, even if you're in choppy waters, even if you feel that sense of anxiety. So that's the experience. And so when you think about that, you might ask yourself, like, when does that show up for you, right? What are the situations where you find yourself being in that choppy raft on the river versus that nice, smooth cruise liner, whatever it is, on whatever waters still are sparkling. Anyhow, so a couple of ways to think about this. One is to look at the situation. There are going to be situations that you know are going to get you feeling agitated. Now, I've got a list of some of my favorites. Running late, that is definitely going to get a bee in my bonnet. Depends on what I'm running late for. I've gotten better at just accepting that sometimes I'm not going to be on time and that's okay. But there are some things where I just don't want to be late. And the default for sure is I'm running late. This is a problem. And I start to feel anxious. Deadlines for me are something that create anxiety. Deadlines that are all piling up for a single day. Deadlines in the future can feel daunting if I know that there's going to be a lot all at once. Deadlines where I'm doing something that's really difficult or I don't really know exactly how long it's going to take. That is definitely something that I know is going to set off that little alarm bell again, because then I've got that thing, that fear of either running late or not getting things done or getting them done, but they aren't up to standard, etc. Other things that might trigger a stress response for me or anxiety, disappointing people, right? I really, really don't like disappointing other people. I'm sure you can relate. And some people might call it people pleasing. I don't know that I'm a desperate people pleaser. I'm okay with setting boundaries and all that. But, if I know that I've got bad news for somebody or that I have to hurt somebody's feelings, that really doesn't sit well with me. And so I start to feel a bit stressed about the fact that I'm going to have a difficult conversation. The aftermath of having said something that I regret, oh, that is the worst. If I'm in a situation and I say something and then I regret it, that will also make me feel anxious. And so that interaction may be done and over with, but I carry that energy with me for the rest of the day sometimes. And so just kind of like dealing with that anxiety of having said something and acted in a way where I'm not proud of it, that can create that sort of lingering stress. And then another source of stress or anxiety can be other people. And I love all the people, but sometimes the people aren't doing the things that we want them to do. Maybe we've got an idea and we're trying to get that thing done and we're trying to get it done on a deadline. And maybe they're not cooperating. They're just not engaging. Maybe they're trying to cooperate, but they don't do it the way that they need to do it. And so you have to then redo it. And that leads to more on your plate. And that can feel really frustrating. Or they deliberately try to make it messy. I mean, that's kind of unusual. But if you've got saboteurs in your life, then that might be really frustrating as well. So again, going back to this first step, we're trying to figure out what the triggers are, and sometimes they're external situations that come up for you. So think about what some of your favorites are. Maybe you can think of one or two right now as we're going through this podcast episode, because you want to know what they are so that you can anticipate and then plan for them, which is really what we're doing today. We're planning for how you're going to deal with your situations where you know you're going to feel anxious and you want to be calm. Now, in addition to those external situations, think about you and what is happening internally that leads to situations where you feel anxious. So I've got a list here. The first on that is your base setting. I think some people run more anxious than others, and you probably experience this in your life. You've got those people who are ultra chill, and then you've got people who are way less chill, and you'll find yourself somewhere on a spectrum going from that uber chill to I'm not chill at all. And what I've noticed about myself is I probably fall at, if I had to guess, maybe 75% not chill. I have an innate sense of wanting to get things done. I have an innate sense of energy that is there when I wake up, and it's usually there when I go to sleep, but usually a little bit softened at that point. And it's a drive to want to get things done, well. I have a lot of energy, I think, and so I'm always wanting to do things and be busy and be productive. And it means I start scheduling things, right? You hear people who retire and they're like, oh, I'm retired, or they're about to retire and they think I'm going to have this really relaxing retirement. And next thing you know, they're busier in retirement than they were when they were working. And that, I think, is because that's who they are as people, right? They're not people who want to sit around and do nothing. They're people who want stuff on their plate. They thrive on the energy of doing different things. So you might find your base setting is higher in the anxiety kind of levels, or maybe it's lower, right? Everyone is wired differently. So knowing yourself, first of all, right? And so if you find that you're generally more anxious, accept that about yourself. Yes, you can learn tools to deal with that and to become calmer if that's what you want. But you might also want to accept that you're wired differently from the person down the hall or your sibling or whoever it is in your life that is calm. And maybe you're paired up with some people who have that sense of calm, and you make a good complement to each other because they help bring you down to baseline and you help get them motivated. And maybe that's really great sometimes. Maybe it's really frustrating sometimes. But anyways, we are here to talk about you. And so what is your base level of nervousness or nervous energy or anxiety, whatever you want to call it? Now, in addition to your base level, think about what some of your physiological triggers are. So I got some for myself. I'm going to guess that these are ones you can relate to. Not enough sleep, right? If I'm running low on sleep, I know already that I'm going to be tired. It's going to be harder for me to control that nervous energy, right? It's going to be harder for me to exude calm if I start to feel really nervous, or God forbid, I start to feel angry or frustrated. I'm tired at the end of the day. Now, this is completely normal. At the end of the day, right? Every morning when you wake up, you have this refreshed capacity to make decisions and to control yourself. And that is a finite resource that wears down over the course of the day. So this is why people like Steve Jobs wore the same turtleneck sweater day after day, because it reduces decisions. Mark Zuckerberg, again, same t-shirt. So you think about how people can reduce the number of decisions that they make in a single day. And I highly encourage you to think about decisions you can eliminate. This is why I love having routines and plans, so I'm not having to make fresh decisions, because every decision you make, no matter how significant or not, is going to wear on your capacity to make decisions. So by the end of the day, you've exhausted that part of your brain that is making decisions, that is responsible for self-control. And so you want to preserve that as much as possible. But by the end of the day, it's quite depleted. Maybe it's not altogether depleted, but certainly not where it was in the morning. And so you might find if you've got kids, for example, and you're trying to get them to go to sleep, that can be really hard. You might find that you're really struggling to control yourself because you're so tired and they want another story and they want to do something else and they want whatever it is. And you may have heard of that book, Go the F to Sleep. I've never actually read the book, but I'm well aware of the title, and you can see where the parent is coming from. It's that sense of like, oh, it's time to go to bed, and you don't want to go to bed. And by that stage, you're depleted. You've made a lot of decisions. So you're tired at the end of the day, hungry, hangry. I'm sure you've heard that expression. So if you haven't eaten for a while and you're past your eating window and you're ready for something to eat, you might find that you get a little bit cranky. So these are all physiological reasons why you might be cranky, getting sick, and especially when you don't know it yet. I find that's the worst time for me. I don't actually know that I'm sick and something feels off and I'm irritable or more nervous than usual. And I then figure, oh, of course, that's why I was feeling off. I was getting sick. And then depending on the stage of life that you're at, there may be hormonal cycles that also lead to you having periods where you're feeling more anxious and maybe less anxious. So just something to know. And then finally, and this is the one that I think we often overlook, the thing I would encourage you to think about when it comes to you is, what are your values? And the reason I think this really is important, and this is something that really dawned on me as I was preparing for today's episode, is that if you didn't care about something, you wouldn't feel stressed about it. I mean, that, of course, I've thought about before, but in terms of the actual, what you do in the moment, understanding that this is driven by something that you care about can help you contextualize. So, for example, if you really value being somebody who shows up on time, and for whatever reason you're running late, you can see how your values have now been engaged. You're about to violate something that is important to you, right? If you really value that you are going to be kind to other people and you're going to support other people, and you're about to do something that you think is going to be hurtful, even if it's for them, their best interests in the long run, or you think it's for their best interest in the long run, that is not going to sit well with you. That is going to potentially create some anxiety. So your values are going to determine and influence when you start to feel stressed. And so notice that, right? That can be really significant. And it may also be a place where you can shift. And I'm going to give an example of that a little bit later. So we've understood already what your triggers are, so the things that can happen, and your baseline, how you're wired, physiological triggers like not enough sleep, and also what's important to you, your values. So the next stage, you've got that understanding, is to understand what is happening when you get triggered. Now, I'm using the word triggered because that just explains it really nicely, and I don't mean it in any defined sense, right? You could replace trigger with activated or some other way of describing the fact that you now have gone from feeling whatever to feeling stressed. You're stressed in the moment, you're feeling anxious, and you need to do something and you want to kind of regain your self-control. So what is happening here is that if you are starting to feel stressed and anxious, chances are you are having a stress response. It is that fight or flight, it's freeze, and sometimes fawn. These are the things that can happen. And what has happened here is that your sympathetic nervous system, that stress response, has been activated. And it is the opposite of the parasympathetic response, which is that rest and digest. So your body has anticipated that there's a threat and it is doing what it does to prepare yourself. I think one of the most helpful materials on this topic is the Kelly McGonigal work that she's done on the upside of stress, right? How to reframe the way you look at stress. So if that is something that's new to you, I encourage you to check out her TED Talk. It's short. I don't know, it's like 10 minutes. You'll learn a lot about stress and how your perception of stress can influence your ability to manage it. So that's a great resource. I'm not going to go into that more. But basically what you want to think about is that the lower part of your brain, the amygdala, has taken over. It's been activated. It's preparing you for some sort of a big problem, a threat that it has perceived. And what has happened is your ability to think more creatively, your prefrontal cortex is kind of diminished in its capacities to function because now it's being kind of hijacked, if you will, by that more reptilian or older part of your brain, right? Your survival instincts are kicking in, and that is at the expense of your higher level of thinking. So understand that in that moment, you are not yourself. You are not your highest self. You are your survival self. And that is totally fine. That is supposed to happen. It is not a problem. You just need to know that that's what's happening, because that's when we're going to do the things that you can do to bring yourself out of that stress response and into a state where you're feeling better about the decision that you're about to make. So that brings us to step 3, which is to stop, and we're going to respond instead of react. So you might keep that as a little cap or a little footnote. We want to respond versus react. That is the choice that we're making here. And the goal of really this episode is to help you develop the skill of being in that moment where you feel stress. You realize, okay, my body is feeling stressed. And how is it that we are going to go from reacting to responding? We want to choose something that is intentional instead of reacting and doing something that we later regret. That is how you're going to learn to stay calm no matter what's going on around. So, first of all, you're going to stop or pause. Now, I realize that sometimes this is going to happen in a moment where you don't have the luxury of time. So I'm just going to explain everything to you as though you had all of the time in the world. And then you maybe can think about how you would apply this in situations where you have less time. So if you have very little time, maybe it's pause for reflection and, think about what you're about to do next with this kind of framework in mind before you do it. And if you've got more time, then maybe we take more steps. So stop or pause. This is where you're going to tell yourself that you have the opportunity to do something different. Then what we want to do is to bring your body and your brain back online. Remember, you've just been hijacked in the most healthy way, right? Your body is responding. It's getting ready to save you, rescue you, protect you. We maybe don't need that level of protection for the situation that's about to take place. So the easiest thing to do is to pause and take a breath. That will create a bit of distance between you and the action. So we just want to build in a pause between registering that you're feeling anxious and doing the next thing. So stop or pause. Now, here you want to think about how you're going to bring your body back. So take a breath. Pause and maybe remind yourself of what you want. So here's an example that is an in the moment type of thing is I used to get really stressed. I still do sometimes with my kids and getting them ready for school and getting them to bed at night. Now they're older now, they're 10 and 12, but when they were younger, it was a lot more challenging because, they were kids, younger kids, they're still kids. They're just more, I don't know, they don't do things the same way older kids do. And if you've got kids, you probably know what I'm talking about. And if you think about what I've shared with you about my own default setting, I tend to run a bit anxious. Deadlines kind of stress me out. So if I see a school deadline, I'm thinking, okay, we got to get to school on time. If it's nighttime, I'm probably depleted because I've made all sorts of decisions that day. My self-control is not great. And so I would find myself getting really agitated and not being the mother that I wanted to be, getting my kids off to school and getting my kids off to bed. So what that means is that if I find myself in those moments, I start to get agitated, and sometimes I still do start to get that feeling of agitation. I now try to pause and stop and ask myself what I really want here. And some sort of a mantra might help here. For me, I think connection over correction. I don't actually use that one, but I learned it the other day and I think, yeah, that's a good one. Relationship over routine is one that I have used in the past. I find that's really helpful. And instead of sort of acting out and trying to get everybody to do what I want them to do, I just kind of say, you know what, if they're late for school, it's okay. You know what, if they're not ready for bed on time, it's okay. I'm tired and I know that this is not my best moment. And so I'm just going to tell them, I'm tired. I really need you to go to bed right now. And I'm just going to go to bed. I'm going to excuse myself and let you do whatever. So that's an example where you might find that you are in the moment and you need to do something different. So just pause and notice what's happening and remind yourself of what you want. So that's one thing that you can do, just that build in that pause, remind yourself what you want to do. So I'm looking at my notes here if you're wondering why I'm stalling a little bit, and then act on that. So the next thing that you might do, some people like to count. I don't really count, but you might find that helpful. Count to 5, count to 10, depending on how much time you have. If you have time, you can do a grounding exercise. So you may have heard of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise. This is something I'll do occasionally. Usually it's more for a big picture anxiety, like if I'm thinking of something more long term and I really want to ground myself. So that's an exercise where you do, 5 at things you can see. Then you look at 4 things, or you think of 4 things you can physically touch. Then there's 3 things that you hear, 2 things that you smell, and 1 thing that you taste. So I did this the other day. I was out walking. I was feeling a bit anxious about something. So I thought, I'm going to run myself through that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. Now I got a little confused by the order of them. So I'll remind you of those. See, right? 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. The order probably doesn't matter as much as the fact that you're taking time to get back into your physical body. And that's what's going to ground you. And then finally, another thing that you can do if you have time is to go for a walk. And not only is a walk calming, I mean, you probably feel good. I learned recently that forward ambulation, so that forward movement, when your eyes are registering things going past you, actually has a physiological effect of soothing your amygdala. So that was the part of the brain that gets activated when you're in the stress response. So there's actually something to that. So that's really interesting. You're walking, you're moving forward, and it's actually having a physiological effect on your brain and calming you down. So going back to this responding instead of reacting in the moment, we've taken a pause. We are doing things to bring your brain and body back online, whether it's taking a breath, reminding yourself of what you really want in this situation. If you have time to count, go for a walk. If you can do this grounding exercise, really what you're doing is just giving yourself and your body time to reset. We want to get back into grounded. That's when we're going to take our next steps. So if it really is in the moment, you might just have to do what it is you're doing, right? Instead of yelling at the kids to get their shoes on and out the door, and why can't you eat your Cheerios faster, or whatever that conversation might look like. It is simply, okay, we're going to move through this slowly and carefully, and maybe we're late for school, and that's okay. So you're choosing a response. So you're going to talk yourself through it. Now, you might need to make a plan. If you're looking at something that is a bigger picture thing, or maybe you're looking at your day in the morning, and you're thinking, oh God, this is really packed. What am I going to do? I love to sit down and just look at the things that I need to do and make a list. I will do this sometimes more than once during a day because it calms me when I can actually see on paper what I need to do. It's a lot less scary and jumbled than if it's just sitting in my brain. So write it down, think of how that's all going to fit together, and that hopefully will start to calm you down. You can now see the plan moving forward. Now, the next thing I'm going to invite you to do, and this is really fun and maybe something that you're not used to do, is to process the emotion that you're having. Now, I'm going to give you some questions. This is an exercise that you can go through, and I did my own example here. I'm really excited about it because I learned something really interesting about myself. I'm going to share that with you because you might be able to relate to it. So what does it mean to process an emotion? I'm going to tell you exactly what that means, at least from my perspective. Number one is to just identify, and I'll take you through the steps and then I'll give you my example. It's just to identify the emotion. Is it fear? Is it anxiety? Is it frustration? Give it a name. Once you've given it a name, then you want to figure out what that emotion feels like in your body. Where is it in your body? What does it feel like? Does it have a color? Does it have a texture? Does it move? Then you're going to want to ask yourself, like, what is this emotion trying to tell me? And this is where it can get a little bit tricky. Talking to your emotions is not something that we go around doing all of the time. So I'm going to share that with you as well, because I think you'll find it quite interesting. It is really helpful if you actually kind of bring yourself to do it. So the example that I'm going to share with you is a recent example where I was in a meeting that went late. And it was an in-person meeting and it was going over time, and I had another in-person meeting coming up. So I was sitting in meeting A and I wanted to get to meeting B, and I was feeling really agitated because as I was sitting there, I was thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm going to leave this meeting and then I'm going to be late for my next one. And I really don't want to say anything right now because it would feel awkward and weird. I don't want to be rude. Everyone else seems to be fine with this meeting going late, but I have this other meeting. And so there was a lot of internal chatter going on and I was feeling very anxious. So to name it, it was a feeling of being anxious. Now, what did it feel like physically? Definitely a tightness in my chest. And it also gave me this feeling of being trapped. And what that means for me is like my whole body started to move a little bit. Like my arms felt like they wanted to move. I was sitting. I felt like I wanted to stand up and get myself out of my chair. I started shuffling my paper a little bit. I started kind of feeling my thoughts racing. Like, what am I going to do here? I need to move. And so it's that feeling of just like, ooh, like it's icky. And what does it look like? It's yellow. In this case, I decided that the anxiety itself felt yellow. Did it have a shape? It's kind of like a star, if I think about it. It's like a jaggedy star with these spikes coming out. And was it moving? Yes, it was like pulsating, right? The spikes were coming in and out. If I give it a visual, that was going on. It was located in my chest and it was kind of telling me like, let's go, let's go, let's go. It was talking to me at that point. And so that is what it looked like for me. You can do this yourself. Next time you have an emotion, and it could be a positive emotion, it doesn't have to be a negative one, but the topic here is, of course, how to stay calm when you're feeling anxious. So it makes sense we talk about that. So you've got this anxiety, you name it, you describe it. And so then you ask, what is it trying to tell you? And it's interesting. I got really kind of caught up on this when I was creating this episode. I'm like, what is it trying to tell me? And I was having a hard time thinking of something good. Here's what I came up with. It was, first of all, it was like, well, yeah, you can plan your days fully and you need to support yourself better. Okay. Maybe you should set expectations with others. And, you probably should excuse yourself calmly instead of what you actually did, which was a little blustery. And then here it is. Assert what you need before it becomes a crisis, right? That is the thing it's trying to tell me. Assert what you need before it becomes a crisis. This is classic me, where I get in a situation where I can sort of see that something is about to happen, but instead of dealing with it ahead of time, I think, well, I'm sure this meeting is going to end on time. So-and-so said we were going to wrap up at the top of the hour. And so I can expect that's what's going to happen. And then it didn't. And so I'm like, well, this can't really go on for that much longer. I mean, everyone is starting to stand up now. Hope is not a strategy. And so this anxiety had a really, really good message for me, which is I need to say in advance, I've got another meeting that starts at whatever time. I'm going to need to leave at X time. That way I've already explained it. Nobody's going to be surprised if I stand up and say, thank you so much, I got to go. That would be the solution. So that was a powerful message. Now, I've got a few more things to share with you. So we talked about talking to your emotion, and I've given you an example of how you can talk to your emotion. Hopefully that was helpful for you. You can think about doing that for yourself. Give yourself a pep talk. Right? If you're in a situation where you feel anxious and you don't know if you can do it, say something nice to yourself. Like, you've got this, right? Yeah, this is going to be challenging, but you're really good at managing deadlines. You're really good at doing what you say you're going to do. Even if it's not perfect, you can get it done. So whatever words of encouragement help you out, by all means, give yourself a pep talk. Remember what's important. So I mentioned with my kids, like if I'm in a situation where I'm starting to get a bit agitated because I want them to do something and they're not doing it, I just have to take that pause and say, you know what? It's more important for me to be calm and for us to keep moving forward, even if it's slower than I would like, so that I'm not kind of escalating a situation or creating a problem where we don't need to have one. And then finally, do not berate yourself. Negative self-talk, telling yourself to hurry up, telling yourself that you're ridiculous, you never should have planned so many things, whatever it is, just don't do it. Just don't do it. Please don't do it. I don't want you berating yourself. I can share with you that whenever I do that, it only makes things worse. It never makes things better. And as a general rule, I really do try to focus on having a much more positive self-talk for lots of reasons. We've talked about awareness. What are your triggers? Like, what's going to happen outside of you that's going to set you up for a difficult situation where you feel stressed? Who are you at a baseline? What are the factors that are specific to you as a person, your physiology, your values? What is happening there that might set you up for a stressful situation? And step 2 really was that when you feel triggered, understand that this is normal. It's a stress response. And then this third step, and this is really like this long list of things to do. So I'm just going to recap that for you so that it's not as confusing as it probably is starting to sound. Stop and respond versus react in the moment. Okay. So instead of moving from that place of fear, we want to move from that place of calm. So first of all, we're going to stop and pause for however long is appropriate in the situation. We are going to bring your brain and body back online, whether that means taking a breath, whether it means just reminding yourself of what you really want. If you've got time, maybe you're counting, you're doing a grounding exercise, you are going for a walk. Then you're going to talk yourself through what you want to do next. That might be making a plan. It might be processing an emotion. Now, with processing an emotion, unless it's something that's ongoing, chances are you're doing this after the fact, just like I did right now, where I had that meeting and now I'm looking at it in hindsight. I didn't have time in the moment to do a conversation with that yellow spiky anxiety that had appeared in the middle of the meeting. Then you're going to want to give yourself a pep talk. You're going to speak kindly to yourself. And then that last step of responding is actually taking that step. So take deliberate action, right? We want that thing to appear calm if you can. How do you appear calm? Look at your body language. Does your body language suggest that you're calm? Are you still versus more maybe active? What does your voice sound like? Are you speaking slowly or really fast? Is your tone of voice on the lower end or at the higher end? Lower voices tend to be more calm. I'm doing that with you right now. And then do your best in the moment. Now, I have another example, and I realized this podcast is getting longer than what I had originally anticipated. So bear with me here. If you are receiving negative feedback, this is an area where I certainly get triggered when I'm in a conversation and I'm hearing difficult feedback, whether it's critical, if you're a litigator and you're in front of a judge and you're starting to get some pointed questions and you're starting to feel agitated. You may have some issues in the moment of really staying calm. And if you've got the luxury of time, what I suggest you do is really focus in on what that person is saying. So you have the awareness that your body is going into this fight or flight response. It will be harder for you to access your capacities, your prefrontal cortex. So know that and accept that, and that is okay. What can you take in during that conversation? If you're thinking of a performance review, for example, or a conversation with a client where they're expressing that they're not happy for whatever reason, take in as much of the data as you possibly can and just know that you're going to have time to do this later. Do what you need to do in the moment. Thank them for their feedback. Invite more information if you've got the capacity to do that. If you're in a real-time situation, do your best in the moment. Answer the question in the best way that you can. And after the fact, what I'm going to invite you to do is to reflect on what happened. And if you have an opportunity to go back to that person, then I would encourage you to do that, right? Gather the information, let yourself calm down, go for a walk, and then make a plan. If it's difficult feedback from a client, you might say, listen, I would love to take what you've just shared with me and come back to you. So let me think about this for a minute and then we'll have a call. And that way you can create a plan. You can go back to that situation when you've had a chance to reflect. You may have further questions. You may have strategies to fix whatever problem it is, but give yourself that opportunity to do it forward. And the key here is simply to realize that you are having a stress response. This is going to limit your capacity in some ways. Take in what you can, be kind to yourself. And once you've had a chance to bring yourself back to baseline, then you want to create your plan. Then you want to channel whatever calm you can channel and take that next step from a place of intention, of having a specific goal in mind, instead of reacting in the moment and leaving it at that and feeling like you didn't deal with it very well. And then finally, the last step. So we've talked about that response, which is a multi-step process. I encourage you to make this a practice. So when you have those moments where things don't really go the way that you wanted them to, think about it. I mean, I've done that here on the podcast, looking back at some situations where I've not acted the way that I wanted to. I had a stress response. I had, a situation where I didn't act calmly, or I didn't like how I acted. I didn't like how I dealt with it or what I said. And so I've gone back, I've done this process. And so next time when that situation comes up, I'm prepared. Next time I have a meeting, for example, I will say, listen, just to let you know, I've got a hard stop at whatever time. And so I'll need to wrap up at the top of the hour. That way it's done. I'm no longer anxious, worrying about this deadline. We are done. So that's it. A quick recap of what we've talked about today. Know your triggers, understand that it is a stress response. If you're feeling anxious, it has kicked in, and that is normal. That's okay. We're going to focus on responding instead of reacting. So we're going to slow down. We're going to breathe. Maybe we're going to go for a walk around the block. We're going to make a plan if we have time. We might address that emotion, process that emotion, have that conversation I just described to you. You might be giving yourself a pep talk. You can do it. You might be writing down that list. Sorry, that probably goes under planning, but how do you take the thing that's happening right now, break it down into steps that are a little bit more digestible, and make a list for yourself so you know exactly what you're going to do to meet those deadlines, or if it's a really difficult project, how to tackle the different pieces of it. You're not going to berate yourself. You're going to take deliberate actions. So again, respond versus react. I would love that for you, for that to be a takeaway from today's episode. Respond versus react. We're going to then reflect after the fact, what happened here? What did I do really well? What will I do differently next time? So give yourself the grace of making it a practice. You don't need to be perfect at this. And what you'll find over time is that you become increasingly skilled at staying calm under pressure, no matter what is happening around you. So with that, my dear, dear friend, you and I have had quite a conversation. It is a longer conversation than I'd anticipated. And so thank you for joining me. Thank you. I hope these tips have been really helpful for you. If you have any questions, you're welcome to send me a note. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you want to join me at tomorrow's webinar, then join me June 26th at noon Pacific time. The link to register will be in the notes with this episode. And if you want to join me for the next 6 months, absolutely reach out to me. I would love to have you in the program and help you take your year and make it something where you finish up in December feeling satisfied and proud of yourself and feeling like you have learned skills to lead yourself, to lead others in a way that feels good to you. It aligns with what's important to you. You feel connected to yourself, to your values, to your goals. And, that's what I want for you. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye and thank you again for joining me. And I look forward to possibly seeing you tomorrow and certainly to seeing you next week. Take care. Bye for now. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, subscribe and follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you haven't already, please leave a rating and review. Your feedback will help me create a podcast that's tailored to your needs and goes straight to the heart of what matters to you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. If you want more information, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com. See you next week.